Me, Emperor's Hammer Introduction. Subjective version of the protagonist, Fan-Hai crossed over and arrived at a cruel fantasy medieval continent, where there were no gentle elves or loyal dwarf brothers. Only sharp, haughty and sharp ears, and a short and irritable person who is meticulous. At the same time, demons invade, orcs abuse, and orcs invade, and humans only know how to engage in infighting, and in times of despair, they call out to a big guy who brutally attacked evil creatures 1,000 years ago, devoutly calling him the Emperor, and believing that one day he will come. Fan-Hai has had enough, he feels that this world is abnormal, he wants a peaceful life. What God gave him was a conscription order. Now, for the sake of the Emperor, he must live on objective version. The human Emperor wields a hammer, shattering any evil and forging a thriving empire with blood, war, metal, and gunpowder. But thousands of years have passed, and now the elves are confined to the country, with dwarves living among the mountains. On the plains and wilderness, evil ravages and barbarism arises. In the 1000th year of the Emperor's departure from this world, also at the darkest moment of human civilization, the year 1210 of the imperial calendar. Until the hammer that once dealt a heavy blow to those evil forces reappeared, but now it is no longer a weapon or a symbol, but a legend. He can cross the land of death and defeat the elite soldiers of Dracula, the vampire lord. You can also tear open the heart of the legendary orc lord and become a gladiator who satisfies the beasts of war for 100 years to die. But in the end, he was the hammer of the Emperor. Fan-Hai, X in. Chapter 1. Emperors Above. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, to the Elector of Oath's special territory, dear Mr. Otril, Jean Xianen. I am your loyal servant, Kane North, the commander of the provincial army led by Miden. I hereby request that if you have any understanding of the cruel situation here, please provide support to Midenling. I have filled out the relevant requirements, which are roughly as follows. Attachment. Whether the Beast-Man community will threaten other land, Kane's writing. How to dispatch an expeditionary force, the personal fun of Countess Middleton, portrait of Countess Middleton, annotated, without embellishment, special note. Her Excellency the Countess is 24 years old, unmarried, with a proud figure, and needs a real man to help her overcome difficulties. The Otester collar is a beautiful imperial bull, which is how people evaluate it. It is the granary of the empire, nurturing millions of people with wheat, potatoes, brewed beer, and soft cotton. It relies on the largest main road of the empire, the Rick River, which flows down from the Snow-White Lady Peak in the south, like the Yangtze River. The Rick River runs through the entire empire and provides unique transportation capabilities for the Ottoman Empire. Millions of food and supplies can be pumped to various parts of the empire like oxygen entering the arteries. People call this the land of gold because every autumn, the wheat fields all over the mountains will be breathtaking. Bards and painters often use this bull-like territory as material. People praise the beauty and gifts here, but this premise is that you must enjoy its blessings while not growing here. Mr. Fan-Hai Xian has a considerable say in this matter. This hard-working man is cutting through damn wooden blocks with a rough saw in the port and shipyard. He is in his early 20s, and just a few days ago it happened to be his birthday. Now it can be considered as 21 years old, barely strong. He is not from this world, but has traveled through an accident and his body has been reduced by about 10 years out of thin air. If it weren't for the shipyard boss's love for children's innate eagerness to learn and affordability, the key would be affordability. If it weren't for that trait, Fan-Hai would probably starve to death on the streets. In order to integrate into this world, he added the word Xian after his name, firstly to pay tribute to the great demon hunter, and secondly to make himself as sociable as possible. He now feels the sawdust inhaled into his nose, the wooden thorns pierced into his palm, and those pains are called by the old boatman. How you treat wood, they treat you the same way. Therefore, during the 10 years of travel, this young man suffered the pain of revenge when he entered the shipyard at the age of 11. But he still thinks he's lucky. Because he had seen farmers pulling a cart of wheat, panting their camels and horses, and finally being collected by wealthy merchants for 20 imperial copper coins. You should know that he saws wood here for ships to use, and can earn a full 5 imperial silver coins per month, and a single imperial silver coin is equivalent to 16 copper coins. 20 silver coins are equivalent to a single gold coin, and 1 gold coin can buy a whole healthy and active plowing cow. However, Fan was lucky because he could receive a full 5.4 gold coins per year, which is 9 silver coins per month. This is quite a decent income in Otest. But the premise is that he can become a trainee shipbuilder from a carpenter as usual. When he broke the last piece of wood, he let out a cow-like gasp, and his sweaty grey rag shirt revealed his decent figure. That's a tough guy figure that perfectly fits people's stereotypes about Otester. Ah! Finally, it's finished again today. The traveler looked at the huge wooden structures he had sawn out of himself, which were custom-made by various chambers of commerce, lords, and others. He used to live in a modern society where steamships were outdated, and only large structures propelled by oil were considered qualified industrial products. But in this world, to be honest, such a wooden sailboat is a top-notch work of technology, and he is about to endure 10 years of work and become an entry-level ship engineer. At the same time, he is only 20 years old. A ship engineer of this age. And with this figure, it's hard to imagine how the hot girls on the streets would view this golden turtle son.In.Law. His colleagues all showed envy towards him, and his carpenter even spoke up. Go to the Oak Barrel Tavern, I'll treat you today. Celebrate the kid becoming a trainee engineer. Otester people are naturally cheerful, and this half-century-old man with a white beard looks more like a muscular version of Santa Claus. Some people suspect that the people in this bull collar grew up to be so spirited by eating beef, but in fact, the secret is only years of hard work and relatively cheap food. Eating more and drying more, before one's bones completely crumble, one naturally looks energetic. In fact, most Otherst men will instantly appear to be in their 20s due to the trauma of overwork when they are over 60. They are using their lifespan to exchange for a meal, as always. However, today, Fan refused those people. Of course, they still went to drink, but lacked an excuse. Soon they made up new plans, such as celebrating the arrival of the newly built ship, the long wind and breaking waves. These are the Otest people, men without worries. But Fan is not a purebred Otist, he prefers to use a ruler in his work more than others, and does not believe in his elusive experience. The wood he makes always fits perfectly, because he is an adult who once lived in the industrial era and experienced compulsory education. I am still an experienced carpenter with 10 years of apprenticeship. If nothing unexpected had happened, his life would have been easy. He walked out of the shipyard and looked at the giant statue standing at the port dock with a defiant expression, which was a man in armor holding a long war hammer. He looks holy and powerful, stepping on a green creature called an orc, the head of an evil-fanged humanoid monster. Zhao's come Emperor, this is what humans call him, and his greatest achievement is to smash a peaceful and prosperous era with a hammer. At this point, people believed in him as if he were a deity, but Fan knew that he had traveled to a strange fantasy world. The signals of war are everywhere, but the so-called dwarves and elves almost only exist in legends. Outside the city of Otester, there are fierce mutated orcs and twisted green-skin orcs. They will devour the elderly and children alive, treating women and men equally. To be alive, just to be alive. Fortunately, he has become an engineer and is about to break free from the sea of suffering and go to the imperial capital of Rickling for further education. He will take a safe waterway, head against the current, and slowly and comfortably reach the safest place in the entire human civilization. He couldn't help but laugh and cursed as he looked at the statue of the emperor. Go to your mother's beast, go to your mother's monster, I'm going to become an engineer. He almost hummed a tune and returned to his own home, a small room on the outskirts of the city wall. Build your own nest with red bricks and mud. Just today, there was an extra piece of craft paper at his doorstep, covered with red ink representing the elector and the highest authority of others. It is now posted on his doorstep, with the words written on it. Mr. Fan Hi Xian, good day. I am Sergeant O'Tester, holding the position of sergeant, and I will be your next superior. The Emperor is in power, and the electors have orders that all adult males aged 18.25 must serve and join the Miden Expeditionary Army. Fan Hai has forgotten how long he hasn't lost his composure. After all, he already felt that his daily work had almost solidified his emotions. Now he couldn't help but inhale and curse in an angry tone. Emperor *U *gold star. Chapter 2. Fan Hai Xian, The Last Gift. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, run away. Although the empire is large, there is no place for deserters, which is written in the dignity of the people of the empire, and this is even more true for the otherites. In O'Tester, you can be poor, you can be weak, but you absolutely cannot be a deserter. This barbaric province is almost universally militarized and is honored with it. At the same time, the Otis people are one of the few bloodthirsty warriors in the empire, with high-quality troops. If they don't want to smear the reputation of their homeland with dark ink. So everyone must maintain this tradition. 10 years of life have also imbued Fan Hai with that kind of vigor and vitality. The next morning, he started packing his luggage and took the linen bag. At this moment, Fan Hai's entire family was in his sight. The most eye-catching ones were the 2 pairs of worn-out grey leather shoes on the outermost layer of the package, along with the 3 he was wearing, all showcasing his nobility and frugality. If it weren't for the work at the shipyard, he probably only loved linen boots. Then there was a set of long sleeves, but he didn't bring the short sleeves because the weather was about to fall, and I heard that Middleton Collar was located north of the empire, so he could only bring his thickest clothes. Other things, such as pots, bowls, ladles, and pots, given that Mr. Fan Hai and Xian are still young and strong. He also had the obligation to bring it with him, but soon reality told him that such virtues of diligence and thrift were worthless within the provincial army. At the gathering point at the port, the teacher Fu and other carpenters and boatmen who were seeing him off were cheering him off. After taking the last sip of beer that was still allowed to be consumed, Fan Hai realized for the first time how enthusiastic and reliable his brothers were. At the same time, he was ordered by the military supply officer to dispose of most of his packages because the ship would not leave any gaps for the soldiers. Even if the big shot next to him had just brought so many goods, including 2 mules and horses, along with about 6 attendants, no one would care. But when this matter falls on Fan Haishin's head, it won't work. Perhaps it was because he didn't have the beautiful clothes that aristocratic officers grew up in, nor did he have the wide and fat colorful hat with a bright peacock feather hanging from its brim. But really, that's because this man was born with a pitiful sour taste of poverty. However, the emperor was compassionate. When he put down those bottles, jars, gourd bowls, ladles, and pots, and changed into the military uniform issued by the military supply officer, it could be said that it was extremely beautiful. That is a beautiful set of lock armor lining, a red and white O'Tester collar guard uniform, and a beret that only sergeants can wear. There is a pheasant feather as decoration, firmly inserted on top. Although the clothes were tight and uncomfortable, the tall Fan Hai looked humanoid in them, and with the accompanying shield and long sword, he looked like a good warrior. In the praise of his old friends, he rarely blushed, said the teacher. Like a man, that little ghost has been an O'Tester bull for 10 years now. His other friends, most of whom are around 30 years old, also agree. I have also been to the battlefield at your age, and I told you about smashing the orc's head. Fan Hai answered. I've said it, I've heard the cocoon. They laughed heartily. This is the friendship of the O'Tester men. Secondly, his military uniform also represents another thing. He is a reserve sergeant, which means he will join the provincial army as a corporal. Perhaps due to his carpentry status, most of the otherites were farmers, and he should be considered one of the best educated besides the nobility. If he performs normally during the training of sailing on the Rick River for more than half a month, he can receive a huge sum of 10 silver coins per month. At the same time, he is also more likely to be promoted to an officer, such as a lieutenant. If he were a bit more daring, he might become a school-level officer and control several battalions in the provincial army. But now, he walked into the large ship that was docked. Ironically, it was the first time he had set foot on a ship he had built himself. The long wind and breaking waves. Next to her is her sisters. The Song of the Empire. These are two heavy transport ships, with limited speed and insufficient artillery, but the advantage lies in being able to overload. Even if they load 1,500 cows on a single ship, they can still sail normally. Because he was involved in the production, Fan-Hai was well aware of these two ladies. Fan-Hai estimated that the number of soldiers who arrived this time was about 3,000, almost the majority of the wearable population that the entire province of Otester could gather in the short term. Two huge wooden sailboats were also inevitable, and it was only when he looked at the paint layer he had applied on the ship that he truly realized that sentence. The saying goes, those who wear silk are not silkworms. However, he was still enjoying the hot breeze on the deck of this giant sailboat, watching the soldiers who were ready to go with him, looking up and holding their chests high. They are honorable, but the form handed over by the military supply officer in the next moment is realistic. That is a form to fill out who should receive their pension, and the size enjoyed by each person is only enough to write the address and recipient's name after the name. Every deceased imperial warrior can receive a pension of 5 gold coins, which is the emperor's greatest mercy to you. The officer surrounded those people and chattered incessantly in front of them. Given that he is wearing plate armor and a beautiful heavy battle axe, most people dare not argue with this adult. Finally, the table reached Fan-Hai's hands, and he pondered as he looked at the raised part of the ship's deck. Thinking that this is the work done by that brother is like insulting Otester's carpenter. But even so, he never thought of who he should write about. Family members. He has nothing, those brothers who work at the same time. With their personalities, even if they get this money, they won't spend it, it's just a waste. After much thought, under the impatient gaze of his comrades beside him, he wrote a name. William Liss, and added a sentence beside it. Find Shuyuan www.jiaoshuyuan.com. Fan-Hai, Xin, last gift. This lady is Fan-Hai's first love, her first love in this world. She is the daughter of the miller, and if Fan-Hai really becomes an engineer and takes it back from Rick, he will probably propose to this lady. How romantic, the comrade who had been staring at Fan-Hai anxiously couldn't help but say. Oh my God, are you really going to give 5 gold coins to a lady? Is it okay for me to start a military romance with you now? His tone was somewhat serious, and Fan-Hai was not quite sure. He only felt a chill on his spine and then pushed down this unscrupulous man. He noticed that this person was also a reserve sergeant and muttered that not everyone was as diligent as him. After the military supplies officer took over the form, he showed a polite expression. It's the kind of pale eyes that are faint, but can definitely be seen in person, and then said in a mocking tone. Are you a Bartoloian? Bartoloia is like France in this world. They are romantic and even appear too casual to the eyes of the imperial people. I enjoy poetry, wine, beauties, and running on good horses in the plains. But now it seems that this military supply officer has some complaints about those romantic nights. Before Fan-Hai could answer, the man next to him who had once wanted to make a lifelong pact with him spoke first. That's right, sir. I'm from Battaloia. Is there anything you don't like? My grandfather was a former kingdom knight. His words were full of pride, making the military supplies officer speechless. Then the man teased and stroked Fan-Hai's buttocks, speaking in a tone that made people stand on end. I really appreciate you, and I hope we can fight together, lying in the same trench. Chapter 3. Once again, Jia cannot escape. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, this Bartoloian has blonde hair, blue eyes, and a delicate face. He is very handsome and one head shorter than Fan high, only about 1.7 meters tall. He is equipped with the same equipment as him, which is a sword shield hand. At this moment, Fan felt as if he had been targeted by a hunter. Under the sympathetic gaze of his comrades beside him, he wished he could throw away his pants. He is not homophobic, he just doesn't like it a bit. So intimate. Fortunately, the military supplies officer quickly announced his dissolution, and Fan Hai also realized that he was on this huge cargo ship with sailors and soldiers, capable of carrying 2,000 people. He wants to meet that strange Bartoloian mixed race again, it's difficult. This even made him feel a bit disappointed, because such an interesting guy is really good, besides his coquettishness, it's also good. And the ship will have to dock for a day today because the night brought by Otester arrived very early. It will get dark from around 5 p.m. in the afternoon, and even if you follow the Rick River downstream, setting sail at night can easily hit fishing nets and port equipment. Secondly, going out at night in Otester is considered unlucky. Because the standard of living in this world is still at the level of the Middle Ages to the Renaissance in Fan Hai's previous life. So going out on a night without light represents something urgent that must be dealt with. This custom also represents people's aversion to accidents. During this period, Fan Hai was assigned to the Otest Expeditionary Force and the Provincial Legion. The 3rd Pioneer Company is responsible for serving as the flank of a shield-breaking and heavy attacking unit like the Axemen after the formation of the troops is completed. Reserve soldiers like them are destined to be selected as elite troops. Its array consists of a row of heavy shield soldiers in the front to defend against enemy attacks, while the rear gunners break through shields and clear infantry, and the flank is flanked by shield sword soldiers to help stabilize the front line. Then there is the last row of spearmen used to defend against cavalry. Interestingly, the corresponding subordinate array is actually wearing neat matchline guns, the Otester Line Infantry Squadron. That's right, in this world, veterans and elites must serve as breakthrough players and fighters ahead. Because although gunpowder has been invented in this world, it exists due to the presence of gods and powerful warriors. In the history of this world, there have been knights who received shells without incident, or wizards who were so powerful that one could tear apart the front lines. So unlike what most people imagine, the invention of firearms is no longer effective and has the decisive ability to change class. But interestingly, it is not uncommon for a rural child to be gifted by the emperor and become a hero warrior with one enemy against 100. Class barriers are a very serious topic in any world. Here, it appears quite random. Some say that one needs to be loyal enough to the emperor to gain power, while others say that a truly powerful knightly order can represent class. At the same time, some people awaken magic and enter the Imperial Mage Academy, where they become legendary lords or professors upon achieving success and fame. Someone awakened magic and went to work as a manual furnace heater in a steel factory after graduation. The so-called upper and lower limits of this world seem destined. But there are also ordinary people who have miraculously killed all sides and saved the empire in an attack by evil forces. But for Fan Hai, knowledge is power. Compared to fighting and killing, he prefers to learn how to forge and make, so he never knows how much combat power he has. This idea was almost inspired by the earnest teachings of his parents in his past life, and it was also due to the considerable capital required for Otester to actively join the military. In this world, joining the military is equivalent to being out of work. Therefore, only a military officer family can train martial arts from a young age, and people like him have no chance even if they have ideas. As night fell, Fan Hai, who had just completed his assignment, had not yet had time to meet his teammates. He was asked to sing the battle song led by Otester. Thousands of people stood on the deck of the long wind and breaking waves, and even the sailors who wiped the deck forever had to stop, singing the song of Otester with this group of soldiers. Thousands of people speak with heavy throats, and at this scale, any singing skills are meaningless, only the trembling of the vocal cords and their resonance. The next door's Song of the Empire could be heard singing at the same time, just like a wrestling competition. The officer demanded that his subordinates speak louder. This is related to the several service soldiers they bet on. And Fan-Hai was also manipulated by such emotions, shouting out the well-known song among the people of Otester. Lyrics. Emperor, your great power will resound throughout the empire. Even darkness cannot conceal sin and heresy, our arrow rain will carry out your holy will. Give cowards anger and leave peace in their hearts. We will convey your blessings and save humanity from evil spirits. Emperor, your great power will resound throughout the empire. Even darkness cannot conceal sin and heresy, our anger will carry through your holy will. Fan-Hai is quite dissatisfied with the religious flavor in folk songs, but in this world, there are languages similar to Latin. A choir full of exotic flavors really makes people feel like a great presence is witnessing them. When Fan-Hai realized that his throat had become a bit hoarse, he realized that he was being carried away by those emotions and became the ones with the loudest voices. The officer cast an appreciative glance at him, and at the same time, a small boat was sent from the neighboring ship, with several servicemen dressed in cloth on board. It seems that he has won. When the singing ended and it was dinner time, Fan-Hai was crowded into the cafeteria by people at zhaozuiyuan.com. Upon entering the ship's hold, the first thing to notice is a strong smell of sweat and a rotting smell from wood touching water. Then there is the sweet and earthy taste of boiled cabbage, with a faint hint of the sour aroma unique to Otester pork sausage and the malty aroma of bread. The soldiers who came first sat in rows on long wooden tables. Slowly, he could only stand and eat. Fan-Hai was unlucky, holding his own food but couldn't find a spot. He hurriedly followed the crowd around, and when he saw several benches with gaps next to his buttocks, he immediately pushed towards them. But another reserve sergeant was faster, and he was disheartened, but he saw a person sitting next to the gap suddenly tugging at the reserve sergeant. The person's body became unstable as a result, and they almost spilled food on the ground, so they slowed down a step. Fan-Hai immediately sat down and couldn't help but laugh as he looked at the disgusted expression on the reserve soldier and the way he left in frustration. He thanked the brother next to him. "Thank you, although I don't really need to sit down either." And at this moment, the familiar Bartoloa tune sounded. "It's okay, we're friends, aren't we? By the way, you sang well just now, and it caught my attention." Fan-Hai stood upright, as if hearing a demon whispering. "That person without a beard is rare in this place. His face is pure white, but he can be said to be a descendant of a knight with a small white face. It's okay, we are still brothers in the same dormitory. At night, we are separated by one seat. And the long night, you have time to get to know me. My name is Heinrich Kemmler, please give me more advice." He reached out his hand, but Fan-Hai dared not answer. As if there was something unclean on it. Chapter 4. Heinrich Kemmler. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, it is truly a wicked fate bestowed by the emperor, during the time when soldiers were forcibly required to enter the dormitory, in the dim light emitted by the oil lamps, in the smelly lower compartment of the warehouse. The beds made up of various semi-suspended wooden boards that were temporarily built are the home of those soldiers. Just like a green train sleeper, narrow, small, and bumpy with the floating of the ship. Clothes and bedding were placed under the wooden bed embedded in the wall, and Lord Otester provided only a thin bed and bedding for each soldier. Many people can only use clothes as mattresses, lying naked on the bed, muttering about their future. But for Fan-Hai, this place made him feel on pins and needles. He looked at the descendant of the blonde knight across from him and could even feel his breath. He gritted his head and said, "I am Fan-Hai Xin, from Otest, a carpenter. I used to be. Heinrich Kemmler had many clothes and things, such as a beautiful knight's sword or a set of men's formal attire. Fan is quite concerned about how this man brings these things, but compared to this, he is more worried about the safety of his buttocks. Heinrich smiled and said that his voice was magnetic and had a French romantic accent. It's okay, I'm not interested in men, I just find it fun. This sentence made Fan breathe a sigh of relief as he slowly tidied up the bed and asked again. Why do people like you enter here? You look like a nobleman. Heinrich looked at the swaying fuel lights, and in the dim light, his expression looked even more full of stories. He finally said to Fan, That's an interesting story. Once, on an endless plain, my grandfather, a novice knight, wanted to complete his trial. He needs to slay a demon, monster, and use their heads to prove that he can inherit his father's property. A village with thousands of people and a beautiful castle. But every knight in Bartoloa needs to do this, even to the point of saying. Although his hometown is still full of beasts, danger, hungry orcs, and twisted orcs. But Heinrich rolled his eyes. The Bartoloan people have already killed all the evil dragons that inhabit the snow-white Lady Peak, which belongs to his mother. Hundreds of years ago. Fan couldn't help but show a funny expression. He had originally thought the story would be very serious. He asked. How did your grandfather solve this problem? Heinrich answered. He came to the empire, and of course, he easily killed the leader of a beast man, the giant Horn. At the same time, he took the spoils of war, but he fell in love with a beautiful lady among the Imperials he protected. He fell hopelessly in love with her, but in my hometown, marrying foreigners or farmers is seen as giving up all noble duties and rights. It's similar to those junk romance novels. My grandfather returned to his hometown, endured that love, and became a qualified kingdom knight, inheriting everything from his knight lord father. However, this old dang actually felt that after being a few years old, he would search for his territory every day and the days of hunting would be too boring. He returned to the empire and married the lady without hesitation. He said he was destined to embrace the thrilling adventure. At the same time, he moved into Otester and became an ordinary guard here, changing her name to the woman's name and adding more words. He couldn't help but curse. His mother's, the kingdom knight. In the empire, he is equivalent to a hero lord, a down-to-earth nobleman, and he has sacrificed everything for women. Stay with me and be a broken sailor in the empire, traveling between the empire and Bartoria, trading wine. Fan asked at this moment. You're not a nobleman, how did you bring those things up? He glanced at the beautiful long sword with a handle. Heinrich answered. A silver coin solves a problem, and sailors earn a good income. By the way, my grandfather's story is quite famous in Bartoloa and has been sung by minstrels for several years. My grandfather's noble family is not just his heir, overall, for that knight family. My grandfather has once again enhanced their folk reputation. I am the only one who suffers. Fan had some empathy and said that he was about to become an engineer. At the same time, Heinrich also expressed his own ideas. You're a unlucky person. 10 years. He laughed as if his life wasn't that bad anymore. Fan also laughed along with him, two Otherite people born in Otherite but not fundamentally Otherite. In this narrow and foul-smelling cabin, I found a kindred spirit. It's difficult, in this world where roads and information are closed, the entire Otester territory may not find a few people like them. At this moment, Heinrich suddenly raised his eyebrows. Well, brother, Fan do you want to try my hometown specialty? He looked at Fan with great interest, and Fan also answered. Isn't it a man's business? Heinrich pointed to his head. What are you talking about? Look at your face, it looks like a farmer. Barto nobles wouldn't sleep with people like you. He took out a bottle of glass from his bag, and although there is glass craftsmanship in this world, it is still at a relatively primitive level. Even in the Empire, glass bottles were a toy that nobles could enjoy and were regarded as excellent wine utensils. But this bottle, which is about the length of a forearm, is obviously not a wine glass, and Fan-Hai has only seen this shaped thing in his previous life. Red wine. Heinrich said in surprise. Do you, a country bumpkin, have a good eye? This is Poldero's golden dry red, which can sell 3 in a bottle. He gestured at the number, Fan-Hai said. Silver. I got half a month's salary. Heinrich's disdainful words. Gold. This is my smuggled goods, understand? There are no imperial tariffs, if we go through the channels of aristocratic buying, we'll get 5. Fan-Hai was stunned. This thing is equivalent to 3 cows. In other words, this wine is equivalent to him not eating or drinking for a year. He immediately started looking for the container, it was a big profit. Seeing his hurried appearance, Heinrich said. Pair the bottles, go to Shuyuan www.jiaoshuyuan.com and blow directly. Mom and Dad, do you still look like an Otis? Fan-Hai became interested and took the red wine. With his long sword, he reluctantly inserted it into the cork, twisted it, and trembled with fear as he opened it. I was afraid that this precious jade liquid would spill, and in an instant, a strong aroma would float over here like a first love that could cover a person's heart. In an instant, the narrow cabin was filled with curses. What wine? Who drank it? Give me a breath. Emperor. Fan-Hai urgently took a few sips, and there was no sensation in the mouth. It was just fragrant, and soon, a burning sensation came over. In an instant, even this rough guy couldn't bear the momentum, and Heinrich scolded him. Why are you drinking half a bottle? I'm the emperor. But the next moment, the footsteps of the sergeant officer came, and there was that kind of noisy insults. Everyone goes to sleep. What? Wine. Heinrich immediately took the bottle of dry red and cursed as he watched Fan-Hai's cheeks turn red. I didn't expect to have another day drinking red wine like this. He held on to the idea of not letting the fat and water flow into the fields, lifted the bottle and dried the remaining half of it. When the sergeant arrived here, he only saw an empty bottle and 2 unconscious fools. He asked with a dark face. What are their names? The military supplies officer next to him answered. Heinrich Kemmler and Fan-Hai Xin, Your Excellency. The officer shouted. Next week. Heinrich Kemmler and Fan-Hai Xin. Responsible for wiping 1/3 of the entire ship's deck. Let the attendants take a break. At the same time, he looked at the bottle of dry red wine and carefully picked it up, wanting to taste it in Kai's mouth, but found that Heinrich had really drunk it clean. He added. Add another half week. Chapter 5. Leaving towards the boundless borderland. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, washing the deck, in the words of many old sailors, is called grinding the Bible. Because its content is just a stone, constantly cleaning and rubbing against the stains on the ship's deck. Then sprinkle the Shanghai River water to keep it moist. However, many people are not aware that this inconspicuous job is not just for cleaning. The wood on the deck is most susceptible to exposure to sunlight, ultimately leading to cracking and becoming brittle. Therefore, keeping the deck moist and clean is a compulsory course for navigation. Secondly, if swimming in the sea, the corrosive effect of sea winds on the deck can also be imagined. It can be said that without the diligent hands of sailors, there would be no officer's heavy boots trampling on the deck of a warship with a majestic aura. If the officer's armor and his heavy weight crush a piece of dried wood, he will sink completely and get stuck on the deck. The comical visuals must have made the emperor laugh as well. But things have always been like this, if no one works diligently, then someone can have unlimited glory. For officers, wiping the deck is a good gift. Because they are aware that they distribute too much food every day. Many soldiers have endless strength, which is inconvenient to manage. Especially with the kindness of the Lord, one can fully enjoy 500 grams of flour and 60 grams of meat. With just so much food, the people of the Otester tribe are probably not enjoying it. In order to avoid their bloating and discomfort, the officers opened the door wide and cut the supplies one by one. 2 meals a day have turned into 1 meal, 500 grams of flour have turned into 250, and 60 grams of fresh meat have turned into pickled meat. Fill the rest with cabbage and satisfy with soup. But the Lord still provided the supplies with his head, so that small portion should not be in the soldiers' stomachs. It cannot be said in detail. But fortunately, we can still find those things on the black market in Otester, and the prices are not too expensive. However, even so, there are still people who have room to cause trouble. In the eyes of military officers, Mr. Fan and Mr. Heinrich are among the best. On the day they boarded the ship, they drank alcohol. According to the provincial military standards, they should be punished with 3 days of hard labor, causing them to suffer from flesh and skin soreness. But the officer found that the alcohol they drank was much better than what they drank themselves. And I didn't leave it for myself. At this point, 3 days of hard work became a gift of 14 days. How kind. However, there is punishment above and fishing below, which has been a truth from ancient times. Before the stars had risen, Fan and Heinrich climbed early onto the deck area they were responsible for. Then Mr. Heinrich had already planned to hand 3 silver coins to sailors in other areas, and their work would be automatically completed in the next 14 days. Every day when I wake up, the deck becomes sparkling, and 3 silver coins have such magic. As for supervision, officers don't like the stern of the deck. It's a place where their iron boots will be stained. And as a matter of course, the supervisor can spend an extra 5 silver coins to shut him up, bringing in less than 9 silver coins, which can turn his military career into a vacation, which can be called magic. Heinrich called this currency magic. Fan evaluated it as rich and strong. But no matter what, the soldiers who were scolded by the officers in the lower deck compartment were enjoying the foul-smelling dormitory. Mr. Heinrich and Mr. Fan are competing in fishing. The ship is moving forward, with huge white sails rising, and the monsoon carrying them downstream. Fan looked at the bustling Otester port, countless brick and tile houses, and huge shipyards. His second life starts here. Where will he go after that? Now he and Heinrich are sitting on the edge railing of the deck, decorated by the beautiful mermaid at the stern, witnessing their departure. Heinrich held a wooden fishing rod and affectionately said to the lady, "Look, that country bumpkin doesn't understand your beauty at all. We will accompany you on our next journey, on the beautiful, long wind and breaking waves ship. Please reward me with a wonderful journey." Fan rolled his eyes. "A country bumpkin. You're also from Otester," Heinrich said at this moment. "But my blood flows through the veins of the lady in the lake of faith. If it weren't for my grandfather's foolishness, I would be riding a white horse and running on an endless plain now. Yes, running, yes, knight." Fan looked at the float of the fishing rod in his hand, feeling the tingling hangover in his head, enjoying the comfortable wind on the river, almost feeling confused for a moment. This kind of day is also good, at least compared to working with wood day after day or drawing bitter engineering drawings. Currently, it looks more comfortable. He couldn't help but ask Heinrich, "Are you aware that we will be sent by military officers to clean the deck? That's why we need to drink." Heinrich answered, "No, I don't know either. I just want to drink. Bartoloyans never think about the long run. My grandfather was like this, and so was my father. The so-called plan and planning are not important. What really matters in this world is living in the present. Serious fishing, serious. I'm the emperor." He suddenly cursed, as his fishing rod was sinking and he was looking for the book garden www.com with great force. There was a powerful one. However, Fan-Hai chose to ignore it and sat next to him in a proper manner to observe his struggle with this thing. Because fishing, especially when big fish come, must be done by the angler alone. Otherwise, if the fish is lost, it's your fault. If the fish comes up, he's afraid you'll take credit. This is the fisherman, Fan-Hai, who spends his days at the dock, knows the hidden rules well. And these two fishing rods have wooden spinning wheels, which are rough and made of special tough wood. Attract carnivorous fish by shaking the silver bait and engage them in wrestling to complete fishing. After a period of fighting, a sharp-mouthed Ji Xiaolan was brought up. It has pitch-black scales, sharp canine teeth, and is about the size of a calf, similar to a small dog. Coastal fishermen call it fong fong, while port residents call it dogfish. This is a migratory fish that lives at the estuary and returns to the warm inner lake every autumn to lay eggs. Their habits are similar to salmon, but they will eat all the prey they see. At the same time, Heinrich smiled happily because this fish has a delicious taste and a tight texture. He can spend some money to have the restaurant handle it properly and then make fish cutlets for him. And he only wants the best fish belly and inner wing meat, the rest will be used as tips for the kitchen. Heinrich was holding the dog fish at the moment, and the sailors and supervisors who washed the deck could not help looking at him. Heinrich said, "See, this is the sailors of Bartolomeo. The true king of the ocean." And Fan-Hai muttered, "It's broken, we've installed it for him." At the same time, I feel my fishing rod sinking. That tactile sensation made him certain that this one was bigger than Heinrich's. Chapter 6. Miden Collar. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, during dinner time, on the deck that was generously praised by the officers for being cleaned by Fan-Hai and Heinrich, it was as clean and skilled as an old hand. At this moment, the thin-skinned second honest man Fan-Hai's cheeks could no longer hang. Fan-Hai's high personal morality and decades of consistent work and life make him unable to be as cunning as Mr. Heinrich. When two beautiful fish cutlets were brought to the kitchen, most soldiers were surprised why the cafeteria would open a small stove for these two people. And Heinrich was obsessed with why Fan-Hai's fish were bigger than him. Men are like this, size and length are more important than face and honor. When an imperial legendary lord competes with his guards in terms of size, they can abandon their identity. But when the lord finds out that the soldier is bigger than him, what will happen to that soldier? We still don't know what to do. And the difference in size between the large and fat fish fillets cut by Fan-Hai with a knife and fork also leads to a sweet taste difference in the plump fish meat during the spawning period. Such deliciousness made Fan-Hai squint his eyes and think about how delicious yesterday's dry red wine should be. When a full-bodied caviar salad, which is a salad mixed with cabbage and sauce and raw caviar, is taken out by the kitchen. The bright red granular delicacies are even more irresistible. Fan-Hai never imagined that his military career could turn into seafood self-help, and Heinrich never expected that his reckless style could be even more reckless in a large organization like the provincial army. Because officers and sailors, kitchens and soldiers are two separate systems of people. You, Heinrich, are a criminal in the army, but in the eyes of sailors, you are a guest. They are the kind of people who live on water, and it's not like they spend a day or two watching people and dishes. However, fundamentally, the reason why Heinrich lived better than Fan-Hai is still because of the imperial coins. There is a saying in the empire that goes like this. Throne coins, sparkling gold, constantly spinning, enchanting souls, stealing their spirits, captivating all the gods. Overall, Heinrich is a noble person of Fan-Hai. Why is Fan-Hai not a noble person of Heinrich? They support each other, and the two brothers can make the boring 15.30-day voyage interesting. At night, it's time to sleep and feel the swaying of the ship. Fan-Hai couldn't help but ask Heinrich. Our enemy is the Beast Man. He became an army essentially because he had enemies, and the empire had many enemies. Countless, green-skinned orcs, vampires, northerners, undead tribes, and so on. If counted carefully, he could speak for a day. Heinrich, who had worked as a sailor, was considered knowledgeable and also answered. It should be that the empire is easily attacked by hungry northerners, orcs, and wild beasts during the winter. Fan-Hai said anxiously. Beast men, I heard it's all about humans becoming humans. Heinrich did not answer, just made a subtle basically agreeing to this matter. This is not considered a secret within the empire, but the official is unwilling to admit it. The beast man is a twisted child born to a woman contaminated by the wind of magic. Their human parents fear them, so they abandon those things. With hatred and disgust towards the empire, those mutated humans with huge horns and fur initiate wars against humanity in the form of tribal and war gang organizations. The land within the empire has been torn apart by them, and the provincial army cannot maintain roads every day. But beast men are everywhere. They split the empire with their own hatred, preventing humanity from forming strong bonds with each other. They are the vanguard of evil forces towards humanity, and they are also the reason why empires cannot replicate the great civilization that emperors once walked on earth. And a few days ago, Fan-Hai, who was still a carpenter, now has to face those who exist, using a slightly dull long sword and a one-handed round shield with wood inlaid leather to kill those compatriots. Therefore, rather than saying that he and Heinrich enjoyed this trip as much as traveling, it is more accurate to say that they did not expect to return safely. Silent all night, busy after waking up, fishing, training and fighting, the repetitive days passed quickly and busily. When Fan-Hai's clean chin grew about a centimeter-long beard, they unknowingly passed 20 days. When the wind on the river grew tired, and the sunlight left Bartoloya's small white-faced sailors several degrees black. Their ship will also arrive at its destination in a while, led by Miden. The Miden territory was the border of the empire, established along the northern wilderness border. Further outward is Kiskov, similar to Russia in this world, which is the territory of the Mauzi. The folk customs here are as wild as Otester, as it faces year-round invasions from wild beasts and northerners, and the harsh climate requires people to be strong. At the same time, Midenling was also a well-known industrial territory in the empire. Every year, a large amount of steel was extracted from Midenling's largest mine and transported to a forging furnace for melting. Steel, gunpowder, firearms, are the endorsement words of Midenling. From the deck that had not yet arrived at the port, waves of white smoke began to appear from afar. Like the waste heat spewed out by a giant dragon rising in the cold north, as if all the clouds in this world were forged here, rising to the sky with chimneys and transforming into countless weather. At the same time, Midenling was once the territory of the dwarves, and the earliest humans here were their helpers. Just as the emperor and the dwarves signed an alliance contract, the dwarves began teaching humans the technique of forging metals. They searched for the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com and were burning minerals. This is the shield of the empire and also the vein of the empire. If Midenling is trampled down by the beast men, the empire will lose a significant amount of resources, namely iron, needed to cast armor and firearms in the coming time. Looking from the deck towards the port, the atmosphere of war is not visible in the current Midenling, and it even looks quite peaceful. Due to the lack of siege weapons by the beasts, although they surrounded the city, they were still unable to tear open the walls cast by dwarves during the imperial era. Those heavy brick walls have been maintained by humans for 1,000 years, just like the ship of Theseus, with no bricks left and still made by dwarves. But that exquisite defense intelligence and structure still exist. And this will also be a new beginning for Fan-Hai, who has now changed into a thick set of clothes. At the beginning of autumn in Otest, the temperature here allows people to vomit white mist. If their support is delayed for a while longer, the beasts will make Midenling miss the autumn harvest, and tens of thousands of residents here will starve to death. When the ships led by Otester entered the port, the smoke emitted from the heavy metal forged factories in the city surrounded by heavy city walls amazed every outsider. A house structure similar to Otester, but no longer paired with golden wheat fields, but with towering large chimneys and towering walls on the ground. At the same time, countless people eager for victory gathered near the port, writing various slogans on wooden signs. There are also people who say they can provide accommodation and food for soldiers. And this is the empire, one that uses steel, gunpowder, death, sacrifice. Struggling to survive in a world full of enemies, crawling forward with a vast civilization. A country that has been declining for thousands of years and can only curl up under its former glory, praying for the protection of the emperor. Chapter 7. Host Families. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Fan-Hai cleared his beard and organized his equipment. He, the ox of Otester, has finally returned. If described accurately, the one who was exposed to the wind and sun on the deck before should be Otester's old cow, and Mr. Heinrich only tidied up his hairstyle, as his large personal belongings contained many effeminate cosmetics. Used to maintain a clean and fair appearance. So overall, he still looks more like a handsome guy than the rough Fan-Hai. According to him, a standard Bartoloan night should bring more than 30 attendants when going out. At the same time, provide a daily supply of 2 ham, 3 bottles of preferred wine, and 2 kilograms of white bread. And prepare various private entertainment activities according to their needs. This is the standard for an expedition. Although the Bartoloians were eyeing the empire, the reason for not taking any imperial territories for 1,000 years has been found. Noble knights are too difficult to serve. If they leave the local area, there will be no supplies left, and they will give up. However, we cannot blame those knights for their arrogance. If 80% of the empire's defense relies on provincial armies, 20% may be legendary heroes. So Bartoloa is the opposite. Fan-Hai can only describe this as interesting, and he also finds it difficult to imagine how a country supported by personal heroism can be compared to an empire. But thinking about how much the empire worships the emperor now, he feels that his arrogance has also dissipated. The humans in this world seem to be all the same. And they followed the large army onto the deck. They were not regular troops. The resident Otester Provincial Army is an elite force responsible for local security, as well as hundreds of high-ranking officers such as bull knights and hundreds of captains. Even so, the people who were eagerly anticipating a change in the war situation still warmly welcomed the guards, who were still farmers, workers, and sailors a month ago. The sergeants walked out of the cabin, wearing a full set of armor, imposing, with the bull badges worn by Otester on their chests. They are truly elite. Although they do not have the ability to fight against 100 enemies, it is still not a problem to hit dozens at a time. As the leaders of the rabble here, the sergeants frowned as they diligently trained for less than 30 days inside the ship's hold for each and every elite. And award them the rank of Otester commander. This is a show of power, and Middleton needs protection. So Otester gave them enough strength to appear, and at the same time, Lord Miden knew that she just wanted her people to die less. The Elector of Oates gained power and alliances, giving him more power in the next imperial regent election. Midenling received military protection from the warlike provinces of the empire, while no longer being isolated and helpless. The only victims are innocent people like Fan-Hai, and it can be said that everyone is happy. If the emperor knew about this, he would also pat his shoulder and say to Fan-Hai, should he have died. It's really an honor. As the sergeant who had been the shopkeeper for almost a month, he patted Fan-Hai's sturdy shoulder with a high-pitched tone and a hard-working personal style. And embed the corporal badge representing the honor of others in front of his breastplate. The so-called provincial army seems to have faded and dried up at this moment. How much does Otester's bright red bull emblem look like a beef jerky? When Fan-Hai squeezed out words of gratitude through his teeth, and the sergeant described the soldier on the deck as a silent and good soldier. This badge ceremony has become comical. However, under the high personal qualities of military officers and the gaze of tens of thousands, possibly kilometers, of leaders behind them, he still suppressed his desire to slap Fan Hai, the stubborn donkey, with his hand. He walked up to the soldiers and said in a confident voice, "Thanks to the Emperor's favor, each of our platoons will select 2.5 soldiers with better looks to go to the local residents' homes for boarding. That soldier will no longer be supported by the Ottoman order and will be converted to the Miden order. At the same time, he will establish good relationships with the locals and promote the spirit of the Ottoman order. At the same time, according to Lord Miden's regulations, such soldiers can receive 60 pounds of white flour, 9 pounds of fresh meat, 3 pounds of pickled meat, and 1 pound of preserved fruits per month. The monthly payment will continue at 10 silver per month." As soon as these words were spoken, the whole staff became agitated. This standard is enough, even to eat well. Nowadays, middling works according to the head, receives food receipts, and strictly restricts the flow of food. In other words, as long as you become a boarding soldier, bid farewell to the satiety of cabbage soup and hard black bread. However, Fan Hai and Heinrich are not very interested in this, and they were not originally following the rules and regulations. They can live a good life with or without food stamps at the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com. Firstly, Fan Hai has the ability to take action, while Heinrich has the wealth and knowledge. These two brothers can't go there hungry. Secondly, this is what is known as a show-off, where good soldiers are released to reinforce outsiders' stereotypes of the Otester leaders. For example, being hardworking and tall in stature. Fan Hai felt that such a thing was unnecessary. Because the good reputation of the Otherite people was built on the soldiers who died at the border of the empire and the farmers who died in exhaustion in the fields. "I never need this so-called boarding." Heinrich, on the other hand, simply felt that it was troublesome as long as it was still within the larger system. He catches the wind and has more opportunities to make mistakes. These two brothers and sisters were surprisingly silent at this moment, but when everyone was in high spirits, their silence was more like raising their arms high. The sergeant shouted, "Fan Hai X in. Heinrich Kemmler. 2 corporals, stand out." They both took steps at the same time, looked up and straightened their chests, and the noisy soldiers came to a halt. The sergeant looked at these two red wine brothers, causing him a headache. However, it was discovered that Heinrich had a beautiful face, and Fan Hai Xin was the standard Otherst bull. Compared to other soldiers who have been on the ship for less than a month, they are already hungry and a bit out of place. The taller one among the dwarves, let alone these two, are not Napoleon. The sergeant can only say, "You two, go report to the military supplies officer. The host family will ask him to arrange it for you, and you will wait for the dispatch from the middling side. Next, you will accept the task of guarding the city. And our troops will set sail to eliminate the remaining troops in a 100% state after gaining an advantage in defending the city. Overall, get off the ship. Next, you will be the leading soldiers of Miden." Chapter 8. Engineering Masters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Fan Hai and Heinrich both have great feelings for the long wind and breaking waves, but as soldiers, they must carry out their tasks. A new environment should also be good, no matter how bad it is. It will never be worse than the dilapidated and shaking interior of the ship's cabin. Facing the colder winter wind, Fan Hai tightened his clothes. They obtained the location of the host family from the military supplies officer and walked down the wooden ladder protruding from the long wind and breaking waves. The people led by Miden cheered and thanked them, carefully selecting hundreds of soldiers who were all good-looking. At this moment, they are like victorious people who receive the kindness of the emperor, but they actually haven't had time to do anything yet. The guards led by Miden lined up in a wall, blocking the excited men and women from kissing the reinforcements brought by Otester. According to the promotion of local lords, they are all voluntarily abandoning their families, relatives, and land. Come to this place invaded by evil forces to help the brave ones survive. However, what interested Fan was actually the soldiers led by Miden, who wore long bare fur hats and provincial military uniforms with blue and white stripes. There are guards holding match guns among them, and it seems that the industrial power led by Miden is indeed well deserved. At the end of the human wall composed of guards, soldiers were sent to be selected in advance one by one. The carriage of a damn host family that has been strictly selected and monitored. That place is probably another barracks, and without a lord, hundreds of live ammunition outsiders would be allowed to live in their own territory without any surveillance. The premise of acting is always safety and freedom are mutually contradictory. So rather than having enough to eat, Fan and Heinrich would prefer to fish on the long wind and breaking waves. Their two brothers got into the carriage, which was a beautiful brown carriage pulled by 3 horses side by side. The coachman was wearing a fuzzy hat, brown tattered clothes, about 30, while exhaling hot air. What a couple of otest people, buddy, are you guys here for the first time at Middleton? The coachman drove forward, and the cobblestone road led by Miden walked almost without any bumps. The huge walls and towering chimneys, about 10 meters high in the distance of the city, make people unable to help but feel whether this is the thriving industrial era of 1900 in England. Fan answered. This is my first time. Heinrich wiped his grandfather's long sword. I've been here once, and the girls here are all very beautiful. The coachman laughed heartily. Of course. But Middenling is not just grand, let me introduce it. Under the chimney, next to the factory, there are many slums. There are poor people everywhere, right? And as you know, beastmen can be considered short-term grudges, but they cannot break through, and the walls cast by those dwarves have not been broken for thousands of years. When I was a child, I saw a massive invasion called the Whirlpool of Gods, and even the loyal Magnus came. But, to be frank with me, the legendary lord was just watching from the wall as Miden's giant cannon cleared the enemy, and the thunderous roar lasted for 3 days and 3 nights before it went out. Some people say that the empire has disappeared, and this dwarf high wall is probably still standing. This is not a joke. But we are not as strong anymore. The orcs have blocked the provincial roads, and Miden cannot get food from other cities. Relying solely on the flow of the Rick River and money for food, poor people like us cannot afford it. The coachman was very talkative, and in just a few words, he explained clearly about the situation with Miden. That's right, it's very safe here, but the biggest problem is poverty. Steel cannot be exchanged for food, beastmen block roads, and cheap food from other cities cannot enter. Spending money on food from other cities will only lead to a scarcity of goods and soaring prices of black market food. His words were full of regret. And he belonged to an engineer who maintained the walls, counted as one of his most loyal servants. That family is relatively wealthy. Even if the food prices are bad, the adult will reward him with a bite to eat as long as they still want to go out. And with such a coachman, Fan could also understand why the engineer wouldn't dismiss him. The gentleman's witty words kept coming along, and the long journey became easy. Mr. Heinrich is also very talkative, and overall, the journey was quite comfortable without a phone or books. As the carriage advanced all the way, it finally stopped outside a 2-story western house, next to the iron fence and fence of the estate, and a child in beautiful clothes ran over. Look at that. It's Otester's soldiers. Dad. Uncle Ovi drove them. That was a boy with brown hair and freckles, at most 12 years old, who trembled and asked the tall Fan. Oh my God, are people from Otester that tall? You're just a troll. The coachman walked down and picked up the young master. Master Hein, they are soldiers who have worked hard here. Don't tease them. The living conditions of this family seem very good, at least better than most of the poor people Fan knows. And the owner of this house was attracted by the noise. He walked out of the room and was an engineer wearing work clothes, monocles, brown hair, and around 40 years old. Even if he comes out to meet the guests, he still holds the blueprint and supports it with a finely crafted wooden board to prevent the blueprint from wrinkling. And when Fan-Hai looked at the blueprint, it was a metal-poured cannon. The human treasure of using gunpowder to defeat enemies, a gift from the emperor. He spoke subconsciously. Thunder cannon. I thought this thing could only be installed on ships, and the city gate could be easily controlled by larger caliber cannons. The engineer's eyes lit up and he raised his eyebrows and mustache. This is not prepared for the city gate, but for the ship to eliminate the beast men. As long as they appear tired during the siege, the Otester people and the Miden navy will rely on the Rick River to chase them. A hint of malice flashed in his eyes. Find Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com and completely eliminate them, as well as the gods they worship. The engineer looked at the tall Fan-Hai at the moment and said with great interest. My name is Hayden Nordens. Are you a new engineer apprentice or a soldier? Fan-Hai answered at this moment. I am a good craftsman, but war has made me miss my own destiny. If I really want to answer, then I am both. Engineer Nordens suddenly said. It's really a gift from the emperor. Come on, I have a little toy I want to show to people like you. He walked into his courtyard with Fan-Hai, and he urgently needed the help of a man skilled in war and engineering technology. Heinrich sighed at this moment. I was actually looked down on. But he quickly noticed that the engineer's child had been looking at his grandfather's long sword. He lowered his body and said. Child, do you want to learn Bartoloya swordsmanship? The little boy named Hein admired him. Can we kill those beast men blocking us at the door? Heinrich smiled. Being able to kill dragons, killing them completely. Overall, their first stop was not bad as Heinrich gained a small fan. And Ocean-wide has achieved its goal of learning new knowledge, but this world is not considered friendly. Outside the towering walls, in a dense forest of pine trees, a massive monster is swallowing the dead bodies of mortals in the twisted whispers of the terrifying priest with a bull-headed human body. And this is the will of the gods, they need to test how much resistance humans still have today. Simultaneously laying the foundation for one's own big plan, and that 4-armed, 10-meter-tall behemoth has a notorious name in the empire. Ghoul Beast, specifically referring to ancient monsters. Chapter 9. The Lord of the Forest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the mountains and forests are trembling, and a powerful force is beginning to become violent. Birds fly out of the hills and start flying south ahead of the actual autumn season. And those birds soar over the sky of Midenling, forming a V-shaped echelon. At the same time, a large number of wild animals and animals also left their homes, but in the forest, waves of non-human animal howls and the sound of hooves trampling did not stop. The deer, sheep, and those with long hooves all ran out of the dense forest, but the drumbeat-like sound of hooves stomping became increasingly dense. In the forest, the imperial hunter, draped in trees and leaves as cover, lowered his long bow from behind. He lay among the sharp leaves of the pine tree, only revealing his own eyes, and now raised his long bow. Several human-sized beasts, dressed in rough cloth and holding spears or machetes made of broken metal and wood, emerged from the forest. The monsters called beastmen muttered disgusting whispers. Swish, an arrow pierced through the head of one of the beasts. The goat-like head was pierced through, and the immense force of the long bow tore open its flesh, completely splitting from its eyebrows to the back of its head, causing it to fall straight to the ground. Other wild beasts with long horns, such as bison or goats, anxiously raised their heads and shouted hoarsely, while the hunter's arrows fired one after another, taking away their lives. The hunter in the green jumpsuit lightly jumped down the tree, looked at the dead monsters, drew an arc on his chest with his fingers, and then said, "More sickle." He looked around with unease in his eyes, and quickly ran towards the outskirts of the forest. He seemed to understand that he could no longer stay here for long, even disregarding his most important hiding and running straight out. He was panting heavily, but he ran faster and faster. He knew something was following him. Those things are not humans, not animals, but crazy monsters. He ran all the way until he passed through the dense forest and reached his hunter's cabin. He hurriedly walked inside the wooden house and opened the pigeon cage outside the window. He fastened a pre-prepared envelope around the pigeon's feet and whispered. "Phoebe, Phoebe, the lord of the forest has awakened, Phoebe, Phoebe." He patted the body of the pigeon, and the gray carrier pigeon took off, flying over the pine forest. The hunter breathed a sigh of relief, as if feeling relieved. But he heard more hooves, more, enough to completely surround this place. They began to eliminate human eyeliner, and the loyal man also completed his responsibility. He is diligent and responsible, and the emperor will also be moved by him. As the herd approached and the roar grew louder, the hunter lifted his dagger from his waist and pressed it against his neck. He would rather die in suffocation and pain than be mistreated by orcs. After the sharp blade penetrated his artery and blood splattered on the ground, the loyal man completely closed his eyes. At this moment, Heinrich Kemmler, who was in the living room, leaning against the heater and commanding the little boy how to wield his sword with Barbarism swordsmanship, suddenly raised his head sensitively. He looked at the window, the birds flying over the sky, and asked the coachman at the same time. "It's not time for the birds to go to Battaloya yet." He frequently travels between the Empire and his second hometown like a migratory bird, and is quite sensitive to this. He almost instinctively felt something was wrong when he saw the fat and robust birds flapping their wings that had not yet been eaten. The coachman also answered. "In theory, it will take another 2 months. Indeed, the birds flew too early this year." Master Hein, also known as the child of Engineer Nordens. He stopped waving his sword hilt and spoke in a childish voice. "I have seen such a situation several years ago." The coachman said. "Master Hein has a great memory. I remember it was 4 years ago. During that time, the elector restricted most hunters' hunting and suddenly blocked most of the roads until it reopened 6 months later." Heinrich drank the black tea brought by his servant and went to the library www.com, feeling something was wrong. Something unusual happened, but he couldn't catch what was wrong there either. He boredly observed the room, with good decorations and beautiful industrial products placed on the table. Gear indicator diagram or military knife, proving the extraordinary identity of the owner here. He spoke up. "Hein, is your father a nobleman?" Hein shook his head. "My father is a scholar and also considered a soldier." The coachman added. "The master is the commander of the engineering unit led by Miden, and according to the imperial rank, he should be a major." Heinrich almost spat out tea. "Major? Isn't that just a nobleman? Still the first generation of nobles. How much credit does he need to become a part of the core of imperial power without fierce war?" Heinrich couldn't help but ask. "Excuse me, what kind of impressive thing has Colonel ever done?" The coachman answered. "No, on the contrary, the master is a hard-working person." Heinrich asked again. "What does it mean?" The coachman whispered in Heinrich's ear, unsure. "Part of the reason for the master's position is that his wife, who is the mother of young Master Hein, is the heir to the electorate of the Middleton territory. She is now the sister of the countess, giving up her status for love as compensation. She has given a position to a talented master. This is not a secret in Middenling, but let's not say I said it." The coachman made a forbidden gesture. Heinrich, on the other hand, enjoys gossip and can't help but ask. "Where is the hostess here?" The coachman shook his head. "So, the master is a hard-working person. 4 years ago, the hostess died in a mudslide when she returned from a trip. She stayed outside forever. Heinrich immediately made an expression of reluctance, but silently remembered this coincidence in his heart. 4 years. Chapter 10. Lifetime Love. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. While chatting with Heinrich, engineer Nordens led Fan-He into the courtyard. Next, Fan-He also witnessed Mr. Nordens's very interesting courtyard decoration style. A heavy thunderbolt gun, with its muzzle flashing a pitch black and deep blue light, was placed in the middle of the courtyard. And next to it are various devices used for urban defense. For example, an iron bucket used to pour asphalt or feces to obstruct enemy climbing. Or used to destroy the large iron axe structure at the connection of enemy siege towers, even the most basic horseback wooden stakes. The entire courtyard was filled with a solemn atmosphere, which was also the first time Fan-He felt the smell of war. He followed the engineer towards the interior of the courtyard, and in front of a basement entrance that could be lowered, Nordens opened the lock of the closed pine trapdoor. The seemingly gentle man changed his tone. Your name is Fan-He, right? Actually, I am certain of one thing. The Emperor called you here. Fan-He nodded, admitting that the name belonged to him, and then answered. More precisely, my sergeant officer called me here. He couldn't understand why the engineer suddenly said this. Nordens opened the door, picked up the oil lamp next to the entrance to the basement, and gently rubbed the flint with the fire switch in his pocket. Sparks flickered one by one, and at the same time, he said. Anyway, I've been waiting for a man like you for a long time. By the way, have you ever had someone you like? Fan-He answered without hesitation. A miller's daughter, she is a cheerful other's beauty like the sun. As she should be, she is naturally loved by many people, but I do have a crush on her. Nordens lit an oil lamp, and a faint orange light illuminated the pitch-black entrance of the basement. Even though the few rays of light shone down at this moment, the deep and still indistinct basement was like a pitch-black abyss swallowing those rays of light. Nordens said. Then you should cherish her well, and then go find her. After this war ends, go and start your own love. The most important thing in life is family, which is one of the few truths taught to me by this world. However, a long time ago, I lost most of my immediate family members due to an accident. Next, the Emperor bestowed upon me a lady who was as intelligent and lovely as me. And his words paused for a moment, his tone a bit lost. At this moment, only 2 people with boots were stepping on the wet marble steps at the entrance of the entire basement, making a clattering sound of footsteps. When they reached the bottom, a smell resembling engine oil spread over them, mixed with the damp smell of underground rust. At this moment, the gentleman spoke again. The beast man took away my lover, and now only Hein is my only one in this world, but those things still bind me. Actually, it's not just him, but also my own weakness. So, as a selfish person, I want to entrust you with something. Mr. Nordens walked over to a wooden table of a director and lit the lamp on it. In an instant, the flames became much brighter and the basement was illuminated. But this is different from what Fan-He imagined, where the light illuminates not mechanical creations, but rather images carved with metal. Those are beautiful paintings, carved with a creature similar to humans forged with hammers and metal. It looks like an ancient mural, but it is clearer and has a style similar to oil paint, while the ancient modeled patterns on it tell others about its long history. And the characters above all look like they have big beards, wear beautiful plate armor, are half tall, sturdy like dwarves. Norden said. I discovered this place 3 years ago and bought the land to build houses, just so that the court or lord wouldn't notice its existence. I am a selfish person. The treasures here may have a greater effect on the empire, but I am reluctant to let my revenge come to an end. He flipped over the table in front of him, and the wooden table was filled with gaps, with a unique blueprint inside. Next to the blueprint, there is an unattractive iron two-handed hammer that is about half a person tall. Nordens pushed down his unilateral glasses. By the way, let me introduce myself. I am the commander of the 1st Engineering Unit under the leadership of Miden. People like to call me the Hun-Hao. Ilis Nordens. And this is the craziest invention of my life, I call it that strike enemy hammer. He picked up the blueprint and handed it to Fan Hai, who took it over. Looking at the complex structure on it, he reluctantly spent some time understanding its uniqueness. This war hammer is driven by the rune magic core left by the dwarves, which looks ordinary but can generate quite terrifying heat out of thin air. According to Nordens, the temperature close to the legendary dragon's breath is called the dragon breath rune by the dwarves. Usually, it is a secret technique used by dwarves to forge ultra-high temperature metals, and this place used to be a furnace for forging secret silver metals. And this divine weapon is not a normal weapon, it is a magical warhammer driven by the dragon breath core. The operational principle adopts a large number of complex engineering pipeline technologies and difficult-to-control cooling circulation systems. Fan Hai spoke up. Can this thing really be used? There is no secret silver as a high-temperature resistant material. According to the above situation, to use the heat of runes, such a terrible heat dissipation system must be used. This is not considered a weapon because it is simply not reliable enough. Without the reliance of secret silver as its heat resistance, excessive use can lead to pipeline rupture, and temperatures comparable to dragon inflammation can kill everything, including users. Nordens nodded excitedly as he saw that Fan Hai could understand his design, as if he had confirmed something. He spoke up. This is the best revenge I can imagine for the destructive power. A dragon that can instantly burn down trolls named Resurrection and Rebirth. At the same time, using it requires considerable strength, and secondly, more importantly, intelligence. Only qualified engineers who understand complex structures and have decades of work experience can ensure and maintain those things while being aware of their threat, in order to unleash their combat effectiveness. Otherwise, compared to a normal war hammer, its unreasonable front hammer handle weight would appear too difficult to use. Fan Hai cursed. You're a lunatic. What are you planning to kill with such a weapon? Nordens showed a low expression at this moment, leaning against the table as if recalling something. My dear, that lady. 10 years ago, I returned as Rick's most successful scholar. She and I are in love with each other. We were originally shining on the 2 stars led by Miden, and in my mind, a lot of interesting engineering designs would make people live better. Looking for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, and she wholeheartedly supports me. He is speaking seriously at this moment. But a wild beast destroyed all of this, it used to be almost a legendary monster. It is called the Ghoul Beast and is an undeniable king in the evergreen forest. It was originally the Lord of the Mountains, the King of the Forest, and has no connection with humans. She and I were on an academic trip back to Aldorf, also known as Rix, the capital of the empire. We were attacked by this ancient forest giant. And I saw that it was manipulated by someone, and the beast man and it went on an attack together. And I am the only survivor, while my lover and other scholars along the way were fabricated to have died in a mudslide. Ironically, the beast men have mastered the method of controlling the Ghoul Beast. This is something that the upper echelons of the Miden leadership know. But they have blocked the intelligence and fled to make people not afraid. In recent days, the beast men may have completely mastered the Ghoul Beast, and a large number of attacks have resulted in the entire Midenling being unable to leave. Now, Lady Cho, they want to rely on ship cannons and enough soldiers to kill that monster. But I know that ghoul beasts with super regenerative abilities will not die. Only such extreme weapons can kill them by smashing their hearts or heads with dragon flame. Nordens is now looking at Fan Hai. You are the only warrior I can find, a warrior proficient in engineering. A warrior who can wield this hammer, a person who can kill that monster. I, Hayden Nordens, entrust you with all of my own, to kill it, for my love, and also for this city. He sincerely named Fan Hi, With such power, you will be the new spokesperson of the Emperor on Earth.